Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the 2024 Azerbaijan Grand Prix race reaction. How are we all doing? Big happy birthday, by the way, right from the start of the stream to Annette. 21 today. Happy birthday, Annette. I don't think you got the result you wanted, so I wanted to start right at the start of the stream before we go any further. But I hope you all enjoyed that race. I hope you're having a good day wherever you are and a good weekend wherever you are. Monday tomorrow, I know. But hey, we had a good race today. I really enjoyed that one. A lot of people voting great in the poll, which I was kind of expecting. You know me by now. I've got quite high expectations for great, but I think that was a good race. I enjoyed that. A little bit dull in place at the start, but once we sort of got those three at the front, close following each other, Leclerc having little looks, that great move from Oscar Piastri, of course, everything happening behind. I think that was a really good race. I enjoyed that one. So make sure you vote in the poll. Great, 69%, lol. Good, 28%. Average, okay, 3%, and 2% think that was a bad race. Can't please them all. Absolutely not. We're going to get straight into this then because we've got quite a lot to talk about. We have got some stewards' decisions to get into. And talking of things that rhyme with steward, hi, Stuart. That's an intro.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Hello there. That was interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was very tense all the way through. And in all honesty, that's not necessarily the order I thought things were finishing, even if you don't include the little crash at the end. Yeah, very fun, wasn't it? And we can see Piastri very much refusing to help Norris today, just waltzing off by himself, completely ignoring all the talking points of this week.
I was going to say papaya rules my backside. I mean, look, obviously, perhaps unsurprising, we're going to start with the race winner. I know, steady on, Sean. And that is Oscar Piastri, his second career win. A lot of people in the post-race coverage saying, you know, this will mean more than Hungary because there's less controversy or less moaning about it like we saw in Hungary, but I don't necessarily agree. I think your first win is always special however you get it, isn't it? But great drive today, superb drive right from the off, really. That fantastic move, late braking, Daniel Ricciardo prime-esque, I would say, into turn one, really late braking. Wasn't convinced he was going to make the corner or they weren't both going up in the wall, but a really good move, took the lead, and then I think defended really, really nicely. I know Leclerc had a couple of cheeky looks into turn one and a few other sort of on the run to turn three was closing in, but never quite had enough Leclerc to take that position back. But a great drive from Piastri to hold him at bay. Really mature. It's hard to forget, or it's easy to forget, sorry, he is still quite young, really. In my terms, very young, but mature head on young shoulders. We've said a lot, haven't we, Stuart, about Piastri, but really great drive today. And I think most significantly from a team point of view, yes, it's a win, but for the first time since I think Australia 2014 is the stats, McLaren are on top of the Constructors' Championship. And for the first time since Spain 2022, Red Bull are not. That's a massive moment. And we'll get on to Lando Norris in a moment as well. But interesting, he said post-race that McLaren's fight, or the ones they're more worried about in the Constructors, is Ferrari rather than Red Bull. So that's really a sign of where we are. But starting with Oscar Piastri, what a drive. Are we surprised anymore that he's got that in him? Really, Stuart? We're starting to see that so often now, aren't we?
Yeah, I think we've known for quite a while that this is within him. This is the kind of driver he is. This is why McLaren fought to sign him up and snatch him away from Alpine. We knew he was a hot ticket. It took him, I think it's fair to say, all of last season to sort of get himself fully acquainted with the sport, get himself into like a good place and a sort of more evened up with Lando, I guess, in terms of pace and consistency. But now, sort of, at least a few races into this season, we've seen that basically the McLaren have two very, very good drivers who are both operating right at the top. There's not much to choose between them, really, these days. So really great to see for them. I think McLaren have got themselves well and truly sorted in terms of how they're working as a team and the drivers they have. They're in a really nice place right now. And it's nice to see Oscar just be able to grab wins when they're in front of him. He stole this one from Leclerc, like the beginning of this race. First stint, at least, it looked like it was all Leclerc's to win. He was waltzing away with it. He sort of flattered at the beginning, like, oh, maybe Oscar would challenge him, and then Leclerc put his foot down, and it seemed like it was game over. But once we got to the second stint, everything turned around, and that was a brilliant, robust defense from Piastri. It's very rare we see a driver fighting so hard for so long to overtake and not really be able to get it. It just seemed like it was inevitable that Leclerc was going to grab that first place eventually. He just seemed to be a little bit faster and able to just keep attacking. But no, Piastri seemed quite happy and quite unrattled, I think, by Leclerc's constant presence. I think it was very rare that Leclerc fell out of DRS zone for the last 30 laps or so. So yeah, really great. I would have been absolutely cacking it. He must have been so tense in that cockpit. But yeah, really made it work. Really impressive. And by the end, last few laps, had managed to keep his tires together a little bit better, which I guess is the benefit of leading in clean air. So yeah, really, really impressive. And we're going to see more of this stuff going forward. So 2 laps apiece, two wins apiece for both drivers in McLaren now.
Yeah, and it's a good point you make actually about the DRS thing. Like you said, so often a driver gets within DRS, particularly somewhere like Baku where you've got that long straight in the extended DRS zone this year, and you just think they're going to cruise past, like you see in F2, almost completely different, I know, in terms of categories, but you just expecting Leclerc to cruise up and go past, but he couldn't get it done. So whether Piastri was being clever with his battery or whether they just have better straight line speed, I don't want a DRS zone to be any longer in Baku, I think any longer than that, and it's just all going to be done by the pit exit, isn't it, or pit entry, isn't it? So we don't want it to be too much longer, but no, I think he drove really well today. And it's interesting on tyres as well, because I think it was Ted or Karun in the Sky commentary said that McLaren felt that Oscar maybe overcooked his tyres in the first stint, which is maybe why Leclerc pulled out that gap. But then also Leclerc said that he was much happier on the mediums than on the hards. So it's maybe, as is often the case in Formula One, maybe it's a bit of both. It's somewhere in the middle. But there were definitely factors at play there. But it is interesting how the race swung on the tyres like that, which I guess isn't unusual in F1, is it? But at the front it felt a little bit odd. We sort of had almost a race of two halves. Leclerc looking good for the win, like you say, and then Piastri suddenly unstoppable out there, but never really broke DRS until Leclerc's tyres, well, they fell off the cliff, as we used to say, didn't they? So quite a moment. But I've not got much in my notes from Piastri other than the pitting on the end of lap 15. Norris, of course, helped out by backing up Perez a bit. He said he was just looking after his tyres a bit more in the post-race thing with Sky. Didn't want to get into actually backing Perez up. But he did help out. That allowed Piastri to just stay ahead of Perez. Great work there. Caught behind Albon on lap 17, which I thought might hamper him, but it didn't seem to make any difference there. Albon didn't have to yield, of course. Got past at turn 1 on lap 18. Quicker on the hards than Leclerc, initially at least, and then that carried on. Lovely late braking move into turn 1 on lap 20 to take the lead. And then never really looked back from there, just defended really, really well. But also, again, until Leclerc's tyres fell off the cliff, he couldn't break the DRS. So that's impressive stuff. I'd be intrigued to see telemetry and things later in the week when it starts to come out, and maybe some more quotes on what he was doing to keep Leclerc just at arm's length, whether it was just better traction out of 16, maybe, I don't know. But really great drive from Oscar. But again, I'm not totally surprised by that one, to be honest. I think he's such a talent, there's no doubt. And it's like you say, it's 2 wins apiece now. So I guess the question for you, and I'll throw it at chat as well, and to anyone watching later, with that win, you know, Verstappen's still quite a way up the road. Norris did just close the gap on Verstappen, but does Piastri bring himself into play a little bit more there? Or if Norris is unlikely to do it, is Oscar even more unlikely to do it, given he's quite a few points further back?
I think there's... Yeah, I think there's got to be a little bit of an element of playing it by ear as we go along here. It's a big old gap, and of course, they weren't able to capitalise this weekend with the absolute, the error they made in qualifying with Norris one way or another. I know they got a bit caught out by what may or may not have been a yellow flag, but either way, Norris wasn't able to sort of bring himself up to at least second place, and by starting in a good grid spot. So yeah, they could have taken a huge chunk out of Max Verstappen's points here today if Norris was in play, but they weren't able to do that. And so we're sort of status quo with that, with the number of races running out. I think there's a chance as we go into Singapore, they'll have quite a big advantage over Red Bull if things are like they were last year. And if they've got the opportunity to take a huge amount of points, they'll probably still favour Norris and see where they can go now that they seem to be on a huge advantage with Ferrari in play as well, perhaps adding a little extra points buffer if they can't, if they're not stronger than McLaren. So I think next couple of races, I think they'll stick with this favouring Norris thing. sort of lightly favouring Norris thing, and then see how the points close up. And if it sort of starts to see out of reach by then, they'll probably just go back to straight, equal drivers.
Yeah, I was just going to say, actually, I just saw the table pop up there. I was still thinking Norris was down in sort of 6th place because I forgot about the crash, because I was setting the stream up at that point. So it's actually 32 points, the gap between Norris and Piastri. So it's probably, you're absolutely right there, I think. Stick with Norris. If they're going to favour anybody, maybe they won't. But, Piastri keeps driving like this. They kept saying on Sky, I think he scored more points than anybody else in the last few races. So, if he keeps doing that, force that. I guess that's his job, isn't it? As in this situation, when you've got Norris further up the field and you don't want to play number 2, you've got to force the team's hand into favouring you, haven't you? So he's got to if he keeps performing like this and winning races and beating Lando and scoring more points than those around him, then that's what he's got to do. But I think the constructors is what they need to aim for. We've been saying that for weeks, haven't we? And they've taken the lead today, which is incredible. I'm not totally surprised. It's been a decade, to be honest, looking at where McLaren have been, particularly those Honda years. But 2014, Magnussen second, Button third, of course, in Australia. That was the last time they had a Constructors' Championship. That does still feel like an age ago, doesn't it? Even though it is only 10 years. But, great stuff from Oscar Piastri today. Lando Norris as well. Really good recovery. I did say yesterday in the qualifying watch on that I thought he'd get top 5 today. Yes, he benefited at the end by the crash, but his driving up to that point was great stuff, wasn't it? The way he managed his tyres when he needed to, ran nice and long on those hards. When Albon pitted, because he got caught up in that DRS train there, once Albon pitted, he pumped in the laps he needed to get himself the gap to Alonso so he could rejoin in clean air, chase down Max Verstappen, got the move done. Defended hard against Verstappen as well, didn't he, before he pitted? So he was really giving it everything out there and thoroughly deserving of getting that little bit of luck at the end when Perez and Sainz crashed. But ultimately, 17th to 4th or 15th to 4th, it turned out, is a fantastic turnaround, a fantastic result, great drive. But it is only 3 points out of Verstappen, isn't it? So do you think, obviously we're looking back at qualifying yesterday, really, do you think maybe Lando is going to look at this, given Verstappen's struggles today, as an opportunity missed as a weekend as a whole? I mean, not today. I think he did all he could in the end. He beat him, and that's what we would have been aiming for before the race. But given qualifying yesterday, quite unfortunate there, and made the mistake as well, which didn't help. Whatever was going on with yellow flags, I don't think anybody really knows what was going on with the yellow flags, to be honest. But yeah, I think it feels like a missed opportunity to take those big points out, unless they can turn that around in Singapore, of course. But 3 points to gain today, that's not enough for the title, is it, if he keeps doing that? Obvious statement, I know.
No, I think a couple of races back, it had to be 8 points a race, kind of on average, to overtake Verstappen by the end. And he didn't do it today. He did it last weekend, just about. So he can recover from this. I think he'll be happy today. I think he won't be happy from the perspective of what he was hoping for on Friday, but from what he was hoping for this morning, I think he'll be very happy, considering this is way above where he expected to be. Even if you discount the crash, he was speaking with Ted Kravitz before the start of the race, and Ted said, "I'll bet you I can't remember what the currency of Azerbaijan is, but I'll bet you one of those that you'll beat Verstappen today. You'll finish ahead of him." And Lando said, "Okay, how?" And he did. Without the crash, had nothing to do with it. He overtook him on track. It was a surprise to me. Most of the race, I thought he was doing well with the strategy he was given, but it seemed like it wasn't quite good enough. It sort of seemed like you could see Verstappen closing into him once the sort of the normal strategy had happened, and Norris had gained a lot of places just by not pitting, and it just seemed like there's not going to have enough left to get back again. But he gave it a good shot. But no, made it work. Watching him absolutely chew up the gap to Verstappen was fascinating, and I think he did really, really good work on those hard tires, as much as he could possibly do in that first hard stint to make this work. So he did a really good job with the kind of tough hand he was handed. So he should be happy with that, and he'll know how good it can be on a day when things are going well for him. So I think he'll damage recovery. Good job for him.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think he could have done much more today, could he? A podium was out of reach.
No.
5 seconds. I mean, only 5 seconds off Russell in the end, but I don't know what virtual safety car's done there, because that tends to throw things a little bit skew, doesn't it? So, but yeah, a good start to be fair as well. 2 places for P13, past Ricciardo to take P12 on lap 3, then Tsunoda for P11 on lap 4. Though Tsunoda had a massive hole in his side pod, which I was screaming from the end of lap 1, and commentary were going, "Is he slow? Is he having problems?" Like, the hole in his side pod. Use your eyes. Overtook Verstappen into turn 1 on lap 8 for P10. Then lap 15 was asked to hold up Perez, which he did. We talked about that one. Lap 24, fighting hard with Verstappen in the battle for what was P6 and P7. I randomly went in my head at that point in the race to Nürburgring 99. I'm weird. I can't help it. But also I was thinking, seeing the championship rivals battling for 6th and 7th just felt weird, even though 6th and 7th is quite a way in the points these days, isn't it? But it wasn't back then, so just a weird moment for me. Random bit of Sean brain trivia there, I guess. Unable to pass Albon, like I say, because of the DRS train. Albon just pretty slippery in that car anyway. Lap 37, eventually pitted for mediums. Good stop and rejoin ahead of Alonso in clear air. P7, 15.5 behind Verstappen with, I think it was 13 laps to go, and got Verstappen on lap 49 for P6. So really good stuff from both McLaren drivers actually today. So thoroughly deserving of the Constructors' Championship lead, which has been coming for what feels like an eternity, but they're finally there. So congratulations to McLaren on that. They've just got to try and hang on to it now, but I think Ferrari could well be the threat there. Interesting times ahead, certainly, and so many different types of track coming up as well. We've got Singapore is very different to COTA. COTA and Mexico have got some similarities, but there's a lot of differences there. Brazil is, well, chaos. You've then got Vegas, Qatar, and Abu. So many different tracks. McLaren are going to be strong at all of them, you'd expect. Ferrari will be in the mix with most of them, and some, maybe, if they can get it right. Red Bull, who even knows anymore? So really enjoyable last 7 races I reckon we've got coming up. But I think my money today, as boring as it would be, and I won't get much of a return, will be on McLaren for the Constructors, I think. So I'd be surprised if they let that slip. But then again, it's only 6 months since I thought Red Bull were going to waltz the championship. So there we go. What do I know? Anything on McLaren, Stuart, before we move on to Ferrari?
No, not much more, except they really did just seem to have everything together today. No, not panicking. Probably, I'd say, got the maximum result they could have possibly got from how they started the race. And they just really seem like a team that have just got it all together right now. Strong car, strong people, strong drivers, and not freaking out. I did wonder sort of at the beginning, sort of towards the end of the first stint, when they didn't immediately cover Perez with Piastri, that they were, well, my thought was, what on earth are you doing? You're going to get undercut. And you could see the little AWS tracker being like, Perez is going to overtake you. But actually, and something we didn't mention, Lando Norris playing the team game, he seemed very happy on the radio. They said, can you hold up Perez for a few corners in the middle of the lap? And he said, yeah, how long for? And they were just like, just 1 lap, which was all he could manage really, because Perez took him as soon as they got to the straight. But I think that little bit of just, as he called it, backing off and charging the battery, allowed Piastri not to get swallowed by Perez, which could have changed the whole complexion of the race from there, potentially, as Perez was very strong today. So yeah, everybody's working harmoniously together. I think there is a chance we may get a Hamilton-Rosberg situation next year, but we got to wait till next year for that kind of excitement, because right now, because of the way the championship is, I think they're quite happily working together.
There is one other thing on McLaren I almost forgot. They have been summoned to the stewards, the team, so not the drivers. So that says to me, whatever happens here, the worst is going to be a fine and a ticking off. For alleged breach of Article 34.13 of the FIA Sports Regulations, team personnel and equipment in the pit lane during the race. Apparently some personnel and equipment was still in the pit lane when it shouldn't have been. So that's... I would be absolutely stunned if that's a sporting penalty for 2 reasons. 1, that's never a sporting penalty. And 2, the summon is for McLaren Formula 1 team, not the drivers. So don't panic, McLaren fans. It's probably going to be a fine for the team, but one to keep an eye on, but I wouldn't stress too much. We have got some other investigations as well. Nico Hülkenberg, Max Verstappen, Esteban, Ocon and Pierre Gasly for overtaking under the virtual safety car. Verstappen's defence to Sky was effectively, we'd crossed the line, the race was finished, we weren't under the virtual safety car, so we'll see what they do. But essentially, they pulled alongside drivers to congratulate them and things like that was what Verstappen did to Piastri and then drove off. And that is probably overtaken with the virtual safety car because the virtual safety car was still out. But I sort of see Verstappen's argument that it was, of course, after the race. But we'll get into that in a bit. I'm not expecting too much to come of any of those, to be honest. But then, no. Who knows with these stewards, Stuart? Sometimes they throw a curveball, don't they? So we'll see what happens. I'll keep an eye on the FIA site if it bothers to load. If not, I'll keep an eye on the document bot on Twitter, which is well worth following, by the way. It does go a bit crazy sometimes. You get spammed, but it's okay. Ferrari then. Charles Leclerc, P2 today. Looked really flat on the podium, actually. Not massively shocking again, I suppose, because that's 4 in a row that he started on pole and 4 he hasn't won in Baku. But it is second place. Tyres fell off at the end, so did very well to hold on, as it turned out. Helped a fair bit by Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez ending up in the wall, but held the start at the lead, maintained a gap of around about a second, 1 or 2 tenths either side for the first few laps, but then began to pull away. Like I mentioned earlier, maybe Piastri overcooked his tyres, or maybe just a Ferrari better on the mediums. Sort of 2.5 seconds clear by lap 9, pitted end of lap 16 for the hards, rejoined ahead of Piastri and Perez, and then overtaken by Piastri, that great move into turn 20, fought back as best he could, but couldn't get back past. Kept DRS, as Stuart's already mentioned, for many laps. Couple of attempts to get through, lap 29, lap 33 in particular, went for a move, but Piastri covered the inside nicely, nothing happened. There was a bit of gamesmanship on the radio, Ferrari saying box opposite McLaren on lap 36, that was a dummy call, didn't stop. I don't know many people at McLaren, but I assume they're not stupid enough to fall for that, because why would you pit Leclerc from a comfortable second place? And yeah, very weird. So they didn't fall for it. And then lap 47 said no rears. They fell off the cliff, and Perez and Sainz were waiting to pounce, and that's when it all went a little bit chaotic. So we'll get into that incident, because that kind of will feed into Leclerc's race as well. But Leclerc struggling. Perez went for the move. Looked like he got it done, actually, Sergio Perez. And then Leclerc kind of came back up the inside, forced Perez a bit wide. That allowed Sainz through. Sainz then got up into third place behind Leclerc. I thought probably, maybe with hindsight, the sensible thing there to do, Leclerc, if he can, is just to let Sainz ease through at that point as well on the run to turn 2, but didn't. And then Sainz and Perez came together on the straight on their run to turn 3. Initially, I thought, Stuart, that was a case of both cars kind of meeting in the middle, but having watched Karun Chandok's analysis and camera angles on Sky, it does very much look like Carlos Sainz is the one moving to the middle of the track, and does look in his mirror as well, but sort of incites his defence. He kind of looks in the mirror just as they're about to hit, so it's kind of too late at that point. But if we have to apportion blame, which I'm sure the stewards will have a look at, it's probably going to go to Carlos Sainz there. But a bit of a mixed bag, I guess, is what I'm saying. Ferrari, great drive from Leclerc, especially managing the tyres late on, even if he did get the help of the crash from those two. Fought hard with Piastri, couldn't quite do it, and then obviously chaos behind with Carlos Sainz. So I guess, how did you see the crash in Leclerc's race? His face was so disappointed on the podium. There's a picture of it. He just looks so fed up.
I guess, where do we start? If I start with Leclerc, I do think he probably had the faster car today. He showed it in the first stint mostly. He obviously had a great qualifying lap. He seems very at home at this track. He hassled Piastri for almost the entire race. Yeah, I think if he'd have got ahead, I think he might have been able to create a gap. It just seemed like he had the punchier, faster car, and I think he was frustrated because I think he knew that. I think he knew there was a win here for him if he could only find a way past. But Piastri defended very, very well. And it's sort of a shame that his tyres just didn't last as long as he might have wanted them to, and he sort of fell back. I actually thought his defense from Perez was rather brilliant, and there were I was going to say 2 corners, maybe one. There was sort of a corner and a half where I thought Ferrari pulled off a masterstroke when Leclerc defended from Perez, kind of pushed him a little bit wide, fairly, kind of just put him out of position a little bit, and Sainz was there, ready to pounce, which is great from Sainz. I thought great move from Sainz. I think you're right. I think either Leclerc, maybe knowing his tyres were a bit shot, should have just ceded to Sainz, maybe, because they're not really fighting for each other in the championship or for anything. There's not really a Leclerc driver's title on the line. Or Sainz should have just tucked in behind Leclerc to bolster the defense for the next few corners and just regroup, I think.
Good point,
Because
yeah.
maybe he could have helped defend Leclerc and kept those two positions. Either way, they decided to sort of fight each other. Because fair enough to Sainz, he saw an opportunity going into turn 2, I think, and kind of went around the outside, and he got out of position. Then Perez jumped back at him again. I think all that so far so good. I do kind of read it as a driving incident, a racing incident. It was funny the first time watching it. It did kind of look to me from the cameras that Perez was the one who started to drift into Sainz. Again, looking at the sky pad, it does compared to the lines on the road, which is how Karun sort of judged it. Sainz did gently drift across the track. I think looking at the lines on the road is one way of looking at it. I think there is a sort of natural line that drivers take. He's not going to stay 4 inches from the wall for the whole straight. I don't think he did anything dramatic. And I think as maybe a counterpoint to Sainz was looking in his mirrors, Perez could see his entire car in front of him. It's not like Sainz was invisible. And I think maybe it was interesting that it might have been that because Sainz drifted so slowly that Perez didn't react to it. Like if Sainz had actually moved across a little quicker, Sainz probably would have jumped out of the way. Maybe it just all sort of drifted in such a slow way that neither of them really saw it happening until they were touching wheels. It's like the crash happened so suddenly after they just brushed wheels with each other. Like it was much more violent crash than the actual impact of the two of them. It was just sort of a reaction to the wheels. So yeah, I see it as a kind of a racing accident. I think they didn't have to be that close to each other. They didn't necessarily have to drift together. I do think Sainz moved away from the wall, whether or not that's moving across the track or not. I don't think anyone did anything ridiculous, I guess is my point. And I do I do sometimes find the argument of like Sainz was looking in his mirrors odd compared to Perez, who has full vision in front of him of the car that's moving over. So I don't know. You know what I mean? It's kind of a bit 50-50 to me.
Yeah, no, the wall, it's not, as I think, I don't know if you said, I know you said about the line, but the wall isn't straight to the line there, is it either? Because it's a road. It's not a purpose-built racetrack. So Sainz has got to move at some point. So there was a squeeze there. But I'm not blaming Sainz. That's why I said, from a steward's perspective, if they've got to apportion blame, it's probably more on Sainz. But to me, my threshold for, look, I've gone through, we'll go through the 21 incidents again if people want to, go back to 2021 reactions. There were incidents there that all of you are saying are Hamilton's fault and Verstappen's fault that I call a racing incident, because I think it's these things happen in racing. There is contact. It's going to happen. So unless somebody, Vettel on Hamilton under the safety car in Baku 2017, that's not a racing incident. Vettel's pulled alongside to ram into Hamilton. Others will argue about brake testing. Let's not get into that one. But that, to me, is a clear and obvious one. This one is just, it's two drivers. They're going to meet at some point. I agree that Perez can see Sainz, absolutely. But also, Perez will argue he's left the space for Sainz to come back, because Sainz does come back, but then maybe not enough space. So, and it also depends on the street track as well, Stuart. I never get this. We always say the track limit is the white line, but we often see cars the other side of the white line. We'll see it in Singapore, for example, quite a lot. So I think the barrier becomes the track limit on a street circuit. So maybe Sainz will say, well, look, I was pretty much nearly all four wheels over the white line and in the wall, so you've got to cut me some slack here. But I'm not... I guess I'm going to say this, and I don't want people to think that I'm just trying to be blasé about it, but I also... with the greatest of respect to both drivers and what happened, I also don't really care. Frankly, neither driver's finished. I think both could have done something to avoid it. Sainz could have maybe checked his mirrors before he starts moving over. I know he's got the wall to think about, but he could have done that, and Perez could have got out of the way, and that's why I sort of come to racing incident. But I know the stewards will look at this and say, well, Perez didn't move. And you're right, Stuart. It's weird, because if Perez can see the car moving, why hasn't he moved? But in the rule book, Perez doesn't have to move. If Sainz moves, they're more likely to give a penalty to Sainz if they have to pick someone at fault. Do you know what I'm getting at? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And you're right. I'm not that bothered about who gets blamed for what, because I think at the end of the day, it's a massive shame, because those top four drivers had a great race. I think Sainz did really well to catch back up and have a go. I think Perez had a brilliant race after what's been quite a long period of struggle for him. I think there were a lot of points on the card today for them and their teams, and it's a shame it ended up in the wall. I don't think it had to, and it's yeah, I think they just got to shake it off. Really, it's just one of those things that happens when you're fighting for every last point and your tires are at the end of their life and all that kind of things happening. You know what I mean? And it's a very dusty track. Like a lot of complaints about how slippery it was out there.
The sun as well. A few people saying in chat you've got the low sun.
Yeah.
That's why when you look at some of the photos on here, it looks like it's dark, but it's not. It's just the low sun and the lens and that. So we've talked about this before, and didn't Sainz blame the sun in Australia? Was it last year when we got all those red flags at the end when he creamed into the side of Alonso?
I think so.
Maybe
yeah.
it's just a Sainz thing. I don't know. But yeah, I don't think it's think it's worth the argument. If it's for the win, you're probably having a different argument. But for me, it's a shame for Carlos Sainz, but it's more a shame for Sergio Perez, weirdly. We'll get on to him shortly, though. But I think up to that point, Carlos Sainz was having a cracking race as well. I put in here observation. That's how I write my notes. Something Sean thought of at the time. Lap 31, you had Piastri, Leclerc and Perez in their DRS train. Then Albon, Norris, Verstappen and Russell behind in their DRS train. And he was kind of very much on his own. But then he was sort of really closing in on the lead three. And he sort of brought himself into play, didn't he, on those last few laps? I mean, he was in third place before the contact with Sergio Perez. So he sort of got himself involved because of everything going ahead. So his pace was really good. He was driving really well. And I think he deserved a lot better than how it ended. But, you know, 6 of one, half of the other, maybe. I don't know. We'll not get back into it. But I think he drove extremely well today, Carlos Sainz. But I also think that Charles Leclerc did. It's just a shame. I just saw a stat in chat, by the way, I am going to read. I wasn't going to because it's going to hurt, but I'm going to read it. Over his time in F1, Charles Leclerc has had 26 poles and only 5 have been converted to a win. That's quite a stat, isn't it? I am going to go double check that is correct because people do like to wind me up sometimes, but I trust that one. That feels right based on what we've seen. But yeah, overall, crash to the point of the crash, it wasn't the win, but still a really good drive from both the Ferraris today, Stuart, I guess is my overall summary of that.
Yeah, I think, you know, if you look up to lap 50, if you just look up to that point and no further, I think they would be really happy. You know, didn't quite get the win, but it was very, very close. It could have been a win. It could have been a 1. It could have been a 1-3. It could have been a 2-3. You know, they were around that kind of point, which is a big step up from where they've sort of been in the middle of the season. They sort of struggled a little bit as they tend to, but in a quite rare move for Ferrari, they've managed to claw their way back up to some decent performance, and I hope this can sort of continue for them because that's great. And having them back in the fight is going to make things even more interesting. So yeah, I think they should be very happy. I think they've got a lot to take away from this weekend and last weekend or last race as a sort of pair. And they're in a strong position they work from. They lost a lot of points today, but I think they can be happy with where they are once they get past lamenting what could have been.
Yeah, I've just checked that stat at a glance and a quick count. It is correct, I believe. So that's quite a stat, isn't it? Thinking about it, yeah. So just read a few.
Lando Norris is going to be careful not to start having the same stat because he's not good from pole either.
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, maybe that generation driver. I don't know. I say that generation. Yeah, I would say Leclerc and Norris are same generation. I suppose Oscar Piastri would be in there as well, but I suppose your Behrmans, your Antonellis, your next generation. But anyway, let's not get into that conversation. Just read some of yours from chat. I know you disagree on the on what I said about Sainz, but just I know I talk quickly and sometimes my mouth runs a bit quicker than my brain, or vice versa. So apologies, but the point was that if the stewards are going to pick somebody, I think they'd lean more towards Sainz. They might do nothing. They may look at it and go, well, you could have done something. You could have done something. You're both out of the race. Shake hands, move on. If only stewarding was that simple, that'd be great, wouldn't it? Did you mean to do it? No. Okay, say sorry. Mean it. That's it. Off you go. But yeah, basically, a lot of people in chat saying, no, that's not on Sainz. A few blaming Sergio Perez. I've been doing this 7 years, Stuart. Generally, when I see the chat split not quite 50-50, but more toward, say a lot saying Perez, a lot saying Sainz. I tend to think that means it's probably a racing incident. That's not really how things work, I know, but it's just how I feel in my experience. So we'll move on from that one, though. But yeah, good stuff overall from Ferrari. Obviously, as a Ferrari fan, could have been better, but it's points on the board. And it's the second place for Charles. So that means he's done third and second in Baku from pole. He just needs one more for the win. Mercedes then, George Russell. He inherited third place today. But again, get ready. Got to be in that position to capitalise on the luck when it falls your way. The usual F1 word line there, but that's exactly what happened today. Solid drive from George. I've not got much at all. Pitted end of lap 12 for Haas. Overtook Verstappen into turn 1 lap 34 for P6. I've not got much on George, but that may well be because that's all that happened. I don't really know. A lot of the focus, understandably, was on Lando coming through the field and Oscar, Charles Leclerc, and Checo at the front, wasn't it? So, understandably. But yeah, good drive from George to get the podium. It would have been fifth without the crash anyway, so it was still good points. Yeah, that was it. Sorry, George, again.
Yeah, he had a sort of solid day at the office, didn't he? He got caught up at the back of that train for a while that was started by Albon and Norris when they were on the off strategy. But yeah, and I think listening to him after the race, he knew Mercedes was sort of kind of the third, fourth best team. That he knew he'd be sort of sixth if there hadn't been a crash and if Norris had been in play, and he, he's realistic about where they are as a team. But as you said, they're able to capitalize by running a solid race, not making any errors, and picking up a podium when it became available. So yeah, good race for him. He sort of, once all the hard starting people shook out, he was sort of, I guess, kind of in a no man's land. He had Verstappen behind him, I guess, for a while, but not really challenging that hard, and was just a good way off the top four. So just, yeah, drove his best race. Didn't really have much to do other than that. And yeah, picked up points for it.
We say well done, Baku. Maybe just well done, George, today. There you go.
He did have a good scrap with Gasly on lap 15, I think, when they were sort of like darting around Ricciardo at the same time. That was quite fun.
Yeah.
That was a good old battle. I tell you what, all round there've been quite a lot of good battles without them all going pear-shaped for the most part. There've been some good fights kind of through turn 1 right through to turn 3. It's good for that, this track.
I think Baku's one of the better street tracks for racing. I mean, yeah, let's not get into that debate. That could be an hour-long debate, couldn't it? I hate Monaco. No. Lewis Hamilton, where was he today? He was P9 from the pit lane. See, P9 looks awful, but when you add from the pit lane, it's not bad at all, is it really? P9, I know he's got a faster car than a lot of those that he's sort of ahead of, and probably a faster car than the Williams as well in the Aston Martin. So nights maybe doesn't sound thrilling, but not bad. He didn't sound very happy on the radio overall today, struggling a bit with things, and that's often the case when super fast drivers end up back there. They tend to get a bit, not mardy, but you know what I mean, a bit downbeat on the radio. Pitted end of lap 12 as well. That was a double stack from Mercedes, by the way, and that was a slow stop at 3.6 seconds. Maybe the double stack contributed to that slightly, but I'm sure we'll find out in the press releases later. Finally, I've put here in capitals, got past Behrman on lap 41 at turn 1. We'll get to Ollie Behrman, but he was defending today, wasn't he? Actually, was squeezed Hamilton a bit towards the wall. There is a picture coming up shortly, but Hamilton stuck it out and took P12. I don't know what happened on the final lap. I think, and we will talk about Haas, I think there was some chaos and shenanigans involving Hamilton, Behrman, Hülkenberg, which has resulted in Hamilton ending up 9th, Behrman 10th, and Hülkenberg 11th. But yeah, a bit like George Russell, I've not got a lot on Hamilton other than he's made his way through from the pit lane to P9 and drove okay and had a slow stop, which maybe 1.6 seconds slower than it should have been. He's still 2.8 behind Colapinto, so I'm not going to think he maybe could have gained a place. But yeah, that was sort of it on Mercedes, really. I'll have a quick look while you're talking, Stuart, and see if they've said anything on the old socials.
Yeah, I mean, listening to Hamilton on the radio, he just seemed kind of miserable all day. Not complaining too hard, but the strategy he was on, he didn't like. He didn't feel fast at any point. He was obviously in a position he shouldn't be in, didn't want to be in all race. It did seem like he wouldn't get points, and I guess he wouldn't have got points if there wasn't a crash, but he sort of seemed a little bit out of sorts and unhappy. The team needed to encourage him that what he was doing was working, even though he was sort of in 14th at the time. Great move on Behrman. I thought that was really good fun. On the dust, a little bit of a squeeze. Probably not the kind of car he'd be wanting to have that move with, a brand new driver in a Haas, but nonetheless, it was good fun. Yeah, I did kind of think, maybe Hamilton will have some fun today. He'll leave from the pit lane. He's in a reasonably strong car, and he'll have some fun scrapping his way up towards the top. But that's not really how it worked out for him today. He didn't get to do what sort of Norris or Albon did with their race after they had sort of more disappointing qualifying than normal. So yeah, poodled around a bit. As for that, I don't know if this is what you want to say for a Haas thing. I when I was doing my notes, I got a bit confused by the order because Hulkenberg was definitely ahead of both Hamilton and Behrman before the incident, and I went into the driver tracker and replayed it and sort of zoomed in, and Hulkenberg seems to lose 2 places as they go past the crash, and I saw a little bit of audio that he got a bit of front wing damage or something. It was very strange. It's amazing nothing has come up on the stewarding actually, because they did change places under a yellow flag. But yeah, something weird seems to have happened that I haven't seen documentation of really yet. But he gets another point, so good for Hamilton, I guess.
Yeah, we'll have a look at that when we get to Haas. I'm not sure. Maybe some debris hit his car or something, Hulkenberg's car, but no quotes either from Mercedes. So well done, George, for the podium. Not quite the win he inherited in Austria, but it's still, it's a nice little podium there, and good stuff to come through from the pit lane for Hamilton to P9. But I wouldn't say an anonymous race from the Mercedes. We saw a bit of them, but I don't feel like the focus was anywhere other than on the front much today, and I think that's the right way to do it. If TV direction, we'd all be furious if we'd missed that Piastri move for the lead because we were watching Lewis Hamilton stuck behind Ollie Behrman. We'd be livid. So it's the right thing to do. Moving on then to Red Bull. Red Bull. Good news. I picked them as the 4th fastest team this weekend, and you could argue Perez pre-crash, no, but actually they ended up 4th on the road today of the team, so I get a point in my predictions. Cheers, Red Bull.
Hey.
That's all that matters. Yeah, so 5th for Verstappen, DNF for Perez. We'll not get back into the Perez site stuff, but we'll talk about Perez in just a moment. Verstappen, pretty grumpy on the radio as well. Got past Russell for P5 on lap 1 at turn 2. Lap 10 said he has 0 bite in the car, so a lack of grip rather than needing something to eat. Pitted end of lap 12 for hard tyres. Slow stop at 3.1 seconds. What's up with Red Bull full stop at the moment? Verstappen's struggling. The car's not where it needs to be. They don't seem to be able to find an answer, and they can't even get the pit stops. The one thing they were exceptional at right at the moment. Rejoining P10 behind Ricciardo. Lap 24 said my brakes are not working as he cut the corner at turn 15, but no issues there because he kept going. Lap 32 said was struggling with a lack of rear grip. So just really not happy today, Max Verstappen. I think Helmut Marko said that I think Max may have said it as well. They were trying stuff out on setup. And Perez was. So Helmut Marko said Perez crash is a massive setback for Singapore and could have consequences. But the positive thing is that Checo's setup seemed to have worked compared to Max's setup because they were running different setups. So also on the subject of Helmut Marko, he was asked if he has written off the Constructors' Championship, and he said, to be honest, yes. So there you go, Red Bull. But then Helmut Marko likes to say things like that, doesn't he? So he may not be the way that the team thinks. But yeah, so pretty miserable for Verstappen today. But people will disagree here because he wants to be winning races. But I'd argue again, another good race of damage limitation for Max because that championship lead has only dropped by 3 points. Terrible for Red Bull to lose the lead in the Constructors, of course. But from a driver's point of view, only losing 3 points to Lando, he might see that as good damage limitation. Or do you think, actually, Stuart, to counter that rather than sort of making the point we made earlier, do you think he'll actually be annoyed because Lando Norris started so far back that he still ended up behind him?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be a massive blow, hasn't it, for someone to start 15th and breeze. Well, yeah, kind of breeze past you, I guess, by the end. He didn't have to attack too hard by the time he got to him, albeit being on fresher, softer tyres. Yeah, I think he'll find it quite disheartening. And last race, recently Lando has sort of just breezed past him on a different strategy without it being able to be defended. They're sort of in different cars right now. I think the positives from this weekend for Max are the setup thing that you mentioned. So they did actually look quite strong on Friday. It did for a while. I thought, oh, maybe this is going to be a real Red Bull track. This is going to be one of the races where Red Bull bite back, take some points back for themselves, maybe get the win. Max was looking pretty strong, but what they did do was they changed the setup before qualifying, and whatever you do before qualifying gets locked in for the rest of the weekend. Max said this, and he was like, "Yeah, it didn't work. It just didn't work for the race. It didn't really work for qualifying. It kind of put us on the back foot, and we just had to deal with it." And being able to see what Perez could do, I think, meant he knows the car's not as bad as it was today. They just made an error in setup, and they know they can go to next weekend, the weekend after, try something different. Maybe, not make errors in setup. Maybe not go bold and stick with what they know, and get some better results. So, if there's a positive they can take from this weekend is that they know why they were slow. It's not like just a complete mystery. So hopefully for them, they can get their stuff together. They can repair Perez's car in the next week while shipping it thousands of miles across the sea, unless they've already sent it. I don't know how the logistics work, to be honest. Either way, yeah, they got a lot of work ahead of them, and Singapore was a tough track for them last year. So, yeah, it's hard to know where Verstappen's head is right now. He's sort of, I don't know if he's less angry on the radio. He just seems to be more sad, as if he's sort of accepted this is where they are right now, and they're just kind of dealing with it.
Yeah. The trouble is it's Singapore next, and they were diabolical there last year, weren't they, really? Was it last year they got knocked out in Q2? Or was that the year before? Liam Lawson knocked that. Must have been last year. Yeah. So,
yeah, last year, because Lawson was the one.
Yeah, he was the one to do it, wasn't he? Yeah, he did. Yeah. Just to say as well to Sim, I know some people watch the stream on a delay, so I don't know if he's a bit behind. So I'll just say I did make that point as a second point that actually Lando came from a long way back and still got 3 more points than Max. So the damage limitation thing wasn't correct. So I did address that. If you're listening live, listen to all the words. If you're a bit behind, then I'll let you off on that one. So that's a tongue-in-cheek comment. Don't take offence. Just I don't know what to say about Max. I just don't know where Red Bull are. I don't know what the solution is. Obviously, because it's me. What would I know? But I feel like he's not hemorrhaged points this weekend, but I feel like that's just it. I still think he's just about got enough to hang on, but at the same time, has he only just got enough to hang on because Lando Norris and McLaren aren't being perfect and delivering the wins every weekend and are letting points slip here and there? If McLaren are delivering perfect weekends, I just don't see how Red Bull and Verstappen can stop them. But who knows? There's an autumn break for gestures vaguely at the room because we've got one, so maybe they'll do something in there. But I don't know what's going on at Red Bull, and I can understand why he's not very happy. But yeah, it is what it is what Sighted Canvas says. I guess that's it. Yeah, it is what it is for Max.
I think the damage limitation thing's interesting because it's sort of, you have to take it from the perspective of where they are. And if this is where Red Bull are, if we look at Max Verstappen's car, and particularly for the rest of the season, and Lando Norris is in the quote unquote correct position for where his car is, then Lando's definitely going to take more than 8 points a race away from Verstappen that he needs. So it is still tight, and I would, from Verstappen's perspective, I would be worried because I think he knows Lando is in reach, even if it's a really, really long reach. I think he knows it's not impossible to be caught.
Yeah, it's not one of those Lando has to win every race and hope Max has 3 DNF situations, is it? Like we used to discuss Bottas taking the fight to Hamilton quite a lot, and you'd sort of go, oh, he's still technically in it, but he does need Hamilton to basically take a 6-month holiday and all that sort of thing. It's not quite that comfortable for Max, but yeah, we'll see what happens in Singapore. But I think really eyes on Cota for Red Bull. Sergio Perez, how do you sum this up? I mean, look, his weekend as a whole, up until sort of lap 50, by his standards of late, was a great weekend. He had the beating of Max. He out-qualified him. He was clearly out-racing him today. He was quicker. He loves this track. And you just think, oh, is this it? Is this going to be the race that gives him that little bit of a lift, and then he gets that confidence back, and then goes to Singapore, a track that he enjoys as well, and maybe delivers there, and maybe that's where he turns his season around. And then that happens, and you're just like, oh, Checo, he can't catch a break, but he's also not able to deliver a break. So it's just sort of like, oh, what is he going to do? But actually, I think, to be fair, he jumped Sainz at the start, didn't he, to take P3. Pitted on lap 13 for hards. Slowish stop, 2.6 seconds. Rejoined behind Norris. Had that little bit of time there where he was stuck behind him for a lap or a lap and a half or two. Kept DRS on Piastri and stayed close. Spent lap 18 behind Albon, which probably cost him some time there. But eventually kind of got through and closed up on quite nicely on Piastri, and Leclerc, and sort of kept himself in range for if something happened ahead. And unfortunately, he was the one that was involved in the thing that happened ahead, so it didn't really pay off for him. But yeah, kind of disappointed for him, but also really happy that he appears to have had a good weekend up to that point, if that makes sense. It's still terrible that's happened. It's still awful that he scored no points, and it's still annoying that he's had that crash, whoever's fault it is, racing incident or whatever. But up until that point, it was actually a really good weekend, so that makes that incident so frustrating. I almost feel like, controversial take potentially, because we want to see drivers going for overtakes, but I almost feel like he'd have been better just tucking in behind Sainz and taking fourth place, as stupid as that sounds, or settling for third behind Leclerc, just because of how bad things have been for him of late. But that's not a racing driver's instinct. That's never going to happen, is it? So I just gutted that he's been involved in that, because I thought that could be the turning point for the second half of the year. But I suppose you could argue, what can we read into it? It's a track that he knows well and enjoys well. So I don't know, Stuart. I can't sum it up. I'm just waffling. Just God's sake, Checo. I guess it's my line.
I mean, this is the Checo the Red Bull need right now. He was strong all weekend. He was strong in practice. He had a great qualifying. He, was within a couple of seconds of the leader for most of the back half of the race. He was sort of in with a shout if Leclerc and Oscar had sort of had a bit of a duff overtaking attempt and put themselves out of position, he could have nipped through and perhaps stolen the win. Like, he was in a good position. I'm glad he went for it at the end, even though it didn't quite work out. He was sort of punchy and feeling confident in the car. And in terms of the constructors, of which we know Red Bull were very much on the back foot coming into this, despite having the lead, this is what they need. They need that second car. Even if he's finishing behind Verstappen, they need him to be in some strong points position. But today, when Verstappen wasn't able to deliver for one reason or another, he was gaining even more points with him, which is why it's such a crying shame that it all came to nothing at the end. And I know what you're saying about bank the points you've got, maybe, rather than going for something bigger, but it seemed worth it. And I think when you hire a racing driver, you want a racing driver that's going to go for as much as they can get. Unfortunately, him and Sainz crashing gave Norris 4 extra points, and it lost Perez 15 points. That's a 19-point swing towards Red Bull in just 2 seconds, essentially. So that was a real, he went from being the hero for Red Bull to well, I'm not blaming him. As I've said, I don't think it's his fault. I think it's just a thing that happened, but it kind of, it went from like a bit of a saving grace for the team in a bad weekend to something even worse. And McLaren gained 28 points over Red Bull today.
That's not insignificant, is it? That's like I say though, just back to the point about banking the points, just in case anyone missed it or wasn't quite catching what I was saying, but we know that's not in a racing driver's instinct, is it? Alain Prost used to do that sort of thing quite often, read it, but that was going for championships. And I think if Alain Prost, even though he's known as a professor, if he gets an opportunity like that, he's probably still making that move. So it's just not in a racing driver's instinct, but it just, I don't know, just frustrated is what I'd say on Checo. But I still think he'll be happy with the weekend up to that incident, I think. But it is a track he knows well. see what he does in Singapore and see if he can carry that on into Austin and that. But a couple of people in chat have said, don't worry about the old Checo soon, which is harsh, but based on recent form, probably fair. But yeah, that's it on Red Bull. I'm not going to sit here waffling about that. This is going to be frustrating for Aston Martin fans again. Fernando Alonso, somehow P6, just appeared on my timing screen in P6 from 7th on the grid. So great result for him. Lance Stroll started 13th, ended up retiring. Lap 1, trying to move at the inside of Yuki Tsunoda at turn 4, contact and puncture. He said Yuki turned in. I'd argue first lap incident. Yeah. Retired at the end of lap 46 with brake issues. So that did force Tsunoda to retire. But Lance Stroll managed to get all that way into the race. In terms of the sound bites, Alonso says, happy with the result today, and we were able to capitalise on some action on the final few laps to take 6th place. It was a little bit of a lonely race for me with nobody ahead to fight with. We were able to follow the trend around us on a one-stop strategy. We maintained a position to those chasing us behind. It was still a tough race with no time to relax. Execute everything well with a good strategy and pit stops. And Lance Stroll says, my race was pretty much over on the first lap with Tsunoda, and I made contact. I dived down the inside. I'm not sure if he saw me or not, but he closed the door, and I had to pit with a puncture. We're all racing hard on the opening lap, and these things happen, but it left us on the back foot for the rest of the race. 9 laps to go. I started feeling an issue with the brake pedal, and it was getting worse each lap. This isn't a circuit to take risks at, and we were well out of points position, so it made sense to retire the car. A frustrating weekend, he says, but frustrating for Lance, but for Fernando Alonso, once again, he said a lonely race, but doing Alonso things, a lonely race, and he ends up P6. I mean, he'd have taken that this morning, wouldn't he? So, given that the faster cars are behind him, still finishing inside the top 6, it's a great result for Alonso. So, his experience worked out, but disappointing for Lance not to, not hit Yuki, I guess.
Yeah, another sort of just sad, unfortunate event for Stroll. But Alonso, I think, just very much delivering what that car's able to deliver. He was basically, once again, best of the rest. There's just a big old gap. If you look at sort of the timing tracker of the drivers, just there's a big old gap from him up to the cars that sort of up the front, the McLarens and the Red Bulls and the Ferraris. And I suppose the Mercedes of George Russell. And he just drives as well as he can. Couple of drivers sort of flirted with getting in a train behind him, but weren't really able to challenge him. So yeah, Alonso doing what Alonso can do and just bring home as many points as is humanly possible with the machinery you give him. He's still there. It's a shame we're not able to see the sort of spectacular side of him at the moment because there's not really much for him to do. But he brought home 8 points, which keeps Aston Martin firmly in 5th place. I don't think they're going to get challenged by the end of the season for 5th, but you got to keep bringing the points home just to be sure, just in case RB suddenly, add a front wing to the car that gives them 5/10 a lap or something.
It's interesting, isn't it? The championship table, Mercedes 309 points, Aston Martin 82, RB 34. That sort of perfectly sums up Aston Martin's season so far. Just sort of, there've been races where they've challenged further up and races where they've ended up further back, but largely they've just sort of been there on their own, haven't they? In a lot, we often read when we do the sound bites, when I read through the quotes, and Alonso's like, bit of a lonely race. I might go back actually one at the end of the season, just look at how many times he said that, because they are sort of a bit no man's landy with pace, aren't they, when everyone's in the race? So yeah, I agree with you, they're not going to get challenged, but just a shame for Alonso, really. Stroll Tsunoda incident, I'm trying to think back to what it was. I think first that racing incident, I sort of don't think that's anything more than that, Stuart, unless you disagree. Yes, Tsunoda's closed the door, but it's a 90-degree corner. He's got to turn in at some point. And Stroll's gone for one up the inside of a corner where you can overtake, but first lap it's a bit risky. So maybe that is just a racing incident. That's the only picture, by the way, of Stroll looking fine was for practice. Nothing today. Yeah, I don't think there's anything in that first lap. These things happen, don't they?
Yeah, I think... We didn't get much in terms of replays of it, but it seemed like maybe a little bit of a squeeze from Tsunoda. But again, on a track like this, first lap, your eyes are everywhere. It's not like you're sort of 10 laps into the race and it's just Tsunoda and Stroll together on track and no one else to have to pay attention to. These sort of, I think you could argue that Tsunoda could give a bit more space, but Tsunoda's probably looking at the cars around him and, there's a lot going on in that first lap, and I think it's just one of those things that happen. It's unfortunate because it did take both of them out of contention, at least. I don't know whether Stroll would argue that it gave them the brake failure in the end, but yeah, but both of them well out of the running really by lap 1.
Yeah, I've nothing else to add. Sorry, Aston Martin. But I guess it's points. They're pretty safe where they are, but it's always nice to score points, isn't it? So good stuff from Fernando. I'm just going to say doing Fernando things. Just checking chat, see if anyone's got anything. Aston Martin literally in the middle of nowhere. They are the midfield, says Red Raven. Fair enough. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, not even at 100 points yet. That's a good point side to canvas as well. But Williams then, let's do the positive then. Not that the 6th place for Alonso isn't positive, but we've got more to say on Williams, which is nice actually for a change. Alex Albon, 7th place today. Cracking drive, I think. Doing a great job on those hard tyres. He was P4 on lap 22. I think running P3 through the stops as well, actually, at one point. So, great driving. Pitted end of that 31 for mediums. Rejoined behind Hulkenberg in P11. Managed to get past the Haas drivers, or at least Hulkenberg. He may have been ahead of Behrman just. Also, I think... we didn't see a replay, but I think Colapinto probably just eased him through with some team orders there, or using his common sense and letting the faster car go on the faster tyres, which he did. And then Albon drove really, really nicely. Pace was really good all weekend, actually, for Williams, full stop. So great stuff from Alex Albon. Fought hard when he needed to, but really, I mean, his driving to keep a McLaren... yes, I know the Williams is slippery in a straight line, but to keep that McLaren and that Red Bull and a Mercedes at one point at bay for all those laps is great driving from Alex Albon. Just got on with his race, didn't really need to do any silly defending. They couldn't get past it. He was just quick enough. So really great stuff from Alex Albon. But with the greatest of respect to Albono, as the kids call him. There you go. Really, I think the story at Williams today is Franco Colapinto and this weekend. Franco Colapinto, the first driver since we worked it out yesterday, Silverstone 2022, to out-qualify Alex Albon. So, well done there. We think. We might need to double check that again, but we think that's about right. It's somewhere there. It was 2022 because Sargent never did he? So, great stuff from Colapinto. And then 8th place and 4 points on the board, which leaps him up into, I think, 19th in the championship. So a great second weekend for Colapinto. And I think there were some question marks after the mistake in qualifying in Monza, and then, of course, the crash in practice, and people going, oh, have they made the right call here? But he's shown in qualifying and the race today that he's probably got a bit more speed than Logie Sarge had. Without sounding awful, I don't want to bring him into the conversation, but I think a great drive. He was the first, actually, to pit on lap 10 from P8 for hard tyres, rejoined P15. Big move on Hulkenberg, though, whatever was happening on lap 49, to take P10, which eventually ended up being P8 with everything else going on. So, absolutely fantastic drive for Colapinto, and great drive from Albon, but just a great result from Williams. And it's so nice, isn't it? Big points for them to move them up to 8th in the Constructors, but so nice to see both cars up there and not just Alex Albon doing Alex Albon things and going on a massive, like he did in Australia a few years ago, that super long run on the hard tyres and making them work. Colapinto was up there too. So, great race. It is only one race and everything could turn again next time, but at the moment, James Vowell's decision justified. Colapinto has bought in to score points, and he has.
Yeah, it does seem that way, doesn't it? And yeah, we were a bit worried when he crashed, because I think another part of the reason Sargent was dropped was because he was ending up quite costly in parts, I think, because he was a bit accident prone, but pulled it all together. It's not an easy track. I mean, he's been brought in at a time we're going to a couple of quite difficult tracks, with this one and Singapore coming up. So yeah, had a really great weekend, solid qualifying. Obviously, Albon had his own problems in qualifying, which, we maybe he would have qualified a little bit higher had he not had that. But yeah, just got his head down and got on with it. Great pace. I think passed Gasly for 10th at one point, so was sort of attacking, defending as needed. He was at the head of some trains of quite a while. He was ahead of a Hulkenberg Albon train for a while, and a Behrman Hamilton train for a little bit. So he was able to sort of keep some people behind as needed, worked with the team, got Albon ahead of him, and yeah, just went out there and scored points, didn't he? Obviously got a couple more points than he would have got without the accident, but he didn't have an accident, did he? He was solid all weekend. And Albon as well, very impressive. I was thinking about this. I think I know he was disappointed by not getting a last run in qualifying, but how much higher would he really have got? I wonder if he had qualified
Yeah.
normally, maybe he would have been on a different strategy. Maybe he would have been ahead of Alonso costly because he was right behind him by the end. But I think it's really hard to say. He definitely wouldn't have got any further than sixth. So yeah, really strong run by Albon. Really impressive to keep Lando and Russell and Verstappen behind him. He actually said their pace was too strong. He said it, and I think he's basically talking about their strategy. And they ended up fighting with people they weren't intending on fighting with. They wanted to keep Norris behind, but they didn't want to be sort of with this sort of Norris and Verstappen, Russell and Verstappen and things. They didn't want to necessarily be messing with those. He kind of wanted them to be out of his way a bit. So yeah, and great for Williams. I think Williams are looking really strong right now and continue to grow, and they're looking like a team on the up. Albon next to Sainz next year, I think is going to be really impressive. I'm interested to see what happens with Colapinto going forward, because I think he's, really putting his name out there into the sport. I think his value is shooting up, and I don't know, maybe a team will find a place for him, even if it's just as a solid third driver or something.
I could see him ending up a bit like, I'm trying to think of an example. Can't think of an example. Somebody who sort of does a good job but ends up in a reserve role somewhere, which isn't a bad place to be, but maybe stays at Williams as a reserve. I don't know. But the interesting thing is, we're sort of looking, I think we had a chat earlier briefly in the weekend about options for Sauber. It's only one race. He could be dreadful in Singapore. We'll find out in a week's time. But if he can keep delivering, he doesn't need to finish 8th every race to do, but if he can keep delivering results like that and be close to Alex Albon and pick up the odd point here or there, of the options that are linked to that second Sauber seat, he might turn ahead there. He might make somebody go, oh, maybe, he's got 8 races worth of experience in F1. Hulkenberg's got lots of experience. Bring him in, put him alongside him, see how he goes. But I think the problem for Colapinto is it's so late in the season. I think he would need to be picking up podiums and wins for Sauber to go, yes, we'll take him. I think they've probably have already settled on a short list, but it's up to him to force a team like Sauber to make that decision. So it'll be interesting to see what goes on there. But I think great weekend for Colapinto, crash aside, obviously, and great stuff from Alex Albon, which again, a bit like Fernando Alonso, not really a surprise anymore. So there we go. Final point scorers then we'll get on to the rest of the field, which will not take long, I can assure you. 10th place, Ollie Behrman. 11th place, Nico Hulkenberg. I don't really know what's happened there. You've sort of gone through it, Stuart, so I don't know how he ended up there, but still, it is a point on Haas debut for Ollie Behrman, which means that he has a 100% scoring rate in Formula One. Just to make that really crap stat and pointless stat there for you. But yeah, good drive.
Street track.
Exactly. Behrman great here this weekend, I think. Out-qualified Nico Hulkenberg. I said it in the qualifying watch-along yesterday. Hulkenberg beat the far more experienced Kevin Magnussen 13-3 so far this year in qualifying. Behrman turns up, out-qualifies him. I think that's a really impressive performance there. I really, really do. Started 10th and finished 10th is Behrman's race there. Officially thrilling. But lock up into turn 15 was about as scary as it got for him on lap 5, I think it was, but managed to avoid the wall. Pitted end of lap 14 for Hards, 3.1 second stop, and then of course had that scrap we discussed earlier with Lewis Hamilton, bit of a squeeze, dust kicked up everywhere, but I think defended really hard actually against Hamilton, harder than I was expecting. I know he wants to sort of make a point and I know he's got a seat for next year, but still he wants to make a point and show he wants to race hard. But usually in that situation, the faster car just breezes past, don't they? And the let's say midfield car tends to go, you're not my race, I'll let you go. But he fought hard, to be fair to him, and that was good to see. It's a cracking drive from Behrman. Did have the crash in practice, so that's quite a hefty mistake, a bit like Colapinto had a crash, but bounced back from that really, really nicely. Great in qualifying, great in the race. Hulkenberg overtook his teammate into turn 1 lap 10 for P11. Quicker at that stage of the race, so made sense. I think that was a team orders thing. Pitted end of lap 15 for Hards, 3.4 second stop, so a bit slower. And on lap 36, overtook Colapinto into turn 1 for P9, which is why I have no idea, Stuart, why Hulkenberg's 11th. Shrugs, but I'm going to try to do some investigating.
Yeah, I mean, he was ninth, or well, Okay, if we assume that Perez and Sainz are out, he was ninth until he reached them, and then as he passed the crash site, he was behind Hamilton and Behrman, which is weird. And the only thing I could find was a little multi-viewer radio quote that said Behrman saying that Hulkenberg has wing damage, but that's it. I think Behrman sort of, they both snuck past him while he was sort of ailing sort of off track a little bit. But yeah, I'm baffled we haven't got more information about that, because it is kind of weird, especially the yellow flags were out at the time. You think something would have been logged by race control.
I'm trying to find some sort of replay that I could sort of watch. So there's a replay here of Hulkenberg and Colapinto. So there's a yellow flag. I think that's a yellow flag. Is that? Maybe not. No, it's not, because then Colapinto goes, no. Colapinto, no, I have no idea, Stuart. I have no idea. I thought it was a yellow flag, but it wasn't. So I just try to see if I find a replay. Just somebody's got a screenshot or something that we can try and work out. But I'm going to turn to chat in a second and see.
So the only thing I got is a tweet from Multiviewer, who have a couple of quotes. And at 14:34, Hulkenberg says, "I hit something big with the front wing," and they say, "Okay, we're checking." And Behrman says, "I'm not sure what the problem was with Nico's car." So clearly something has happened to Nico's car. I think he's hit a bit debris and maybe slowed down out of a caution, and they just nipped past him, is what it sounds like.
The replay I found is of just Colapinto breezing past Hulkenberg as he seems to just pull to the left out of the way. But I don't know if that's from... I don't recall seeing that in the race itself, so that might be from what was going on there. So Colapinto's behind him in... No, it can't be, because Perez and Sainz still in the race. I have no idea. We'll go with that. We'll go with what you said. Black Hawk says Hulkenberg missed that they passed a green flag before the virtual safety car came out, and Hamilton and Behrman overtook him. So there might be that there. That makes sense, actually. Backing off for a yellow, green flag, and then not. Yeah, quite a weird mistake though, isn't it? But yeah, no. But ultimately, it's a point for Haas, and Hulkenberg will be disappointed. Of course he will. But it is a point for Haas for Ollie Behrman. So congratulations to him. What can I say on Behrman? Because at the end of the day, he's got a seat for next year, hasn't he? So maybe that just gives Haas a bit more confidence in their decision. But I suppose they've got to have a lot of confidence to have made that call in the first place. So, yeah. I don't know, Stuart. I have no idea what to say on Haas. I just think it was a really strong drive from Behrman, and I don't think Hulkenberg had a bad weekend either. Another day they're both in the points, and that sounds obvious, but another day that, they're where Williams are, just didn't work out for them quite that well. I was looking for quotes and I can't find them from Haas, weirdly.
I've got some quotes if you want them.
Oh, go on then.
From the all right, Hulkenberg. It was actually going better than expected, to be honest. We managed to find some rhythm and pace today, which I'm happy and pleased about. Unfortunately, in the last few laps, I faced some issues, and with the accident at the end, I got caught off guard. For me, it was a straight safety car or even red flag, as there was some real carnage down the straight. Instead of a green flag, I lost positions and lost the result, unfortunately. The whole track was covered in debris. I ran over a massive piece, which I couldn't see because the car in front of me. It was pretty crazy last two laps. Unfortunately, not in our favour. So that sort of covers that, I guess. And Behrman says, I missed some pace in the first stint, lost a few positions there. That put me a bit behind in the race as I got some traffic and lost time. In the second stint, I'm quite happy with the performance. It's tough when you're trying to overtake. You really have to push the tyres and they get so hot. And I was pushing hard to overtake Franco, and eventually Lewis overtook me. So he was using his experience there. I wasn't going to finish in the points, but there was some misfortune in front of me, which allowed me to do so. So there you go. That's from the Haas press release.
There you go. You did a great job, Stuart. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Just on that note as well, just on press releases, Franco Colapinto says, to score my first points in Formula One is a fantastic feeling. I'm so proud of this team for what we've already been able to achieve together. I'm delighted to have points on the board to show for all the hard work and effort we've been putting in, with it only being my second race. Good race today, good race pace today. Being very close to Aston, finished 7th and 8th alongside Alex, means we're now P8 in the Constructors. Thanks, Franco. Alex means, done that one. Still need to keep learning and improving together as it's a long season with many races left. There are still a lot of races left. And Alex Albon, know how difficult it is to get P9s and P10s in races, so to get P7 and P8 is luxurious, and we'll take that. I think he said to Ted, just caught it before we went live, I think he was explaining to Ted that when sort of 9th and 10th is the best you can expect with all those in front of you finishing, to finish 7th and 8th was massive. But I think he worded in a way that I think even confused Ted, which is quite an achievement. So well done to Albon for that as well. Moved in front of Alpine in the constructors. That's the target for the end of the year, apparently. Shows he made good progress with the upgrade. Another weekend where we've had similar pace to the Astons, and we've scored points for the second race in a row. Much quicker than we expected to be compared to the top teams, and it was nice to be in the fight. So that's what Williams had to say. I'm going to leave our emails open because we are going to move on now to the rest, as I call them. This won't take long. Alpine, Gasly started 18th, finished in 12th, so yeah, not bad. Ocon started in the pit lane, finished in 15th. Lap 37 went wide at turn 1, but rejoined is what I have for Esteban Ocon.
It's more than what I've got, I'll tell you that.
Is it another week where we say they were there for Alpine? I don't feel like we see a lot of them at all anymore, actually, unless there's protests or whatever going on, or Ryan Reynolds is on site. I don't know.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because mid-season, they seem to be on the ascendancy. We had a naff start, and then they were getting themselves regularly in the points, and we thought, all right, they get themselves together here, and now they've just kind of dropped back out of it again, I guess. I guess as the rest of the midfielders brought in even better developments. Yeah, I wonder if they just got their head down and looking forward to next year now, and they kind of know that this year's not going to deliver much. But very strange, honestly.
I really hate that their website link, by the way, sends you to their site. Now I'm now on a site to buy an A290. Like come on, I don't want to buy a car. So I don't know why they don't just send you to an F1 page. It's a little bit annoying, actually. But yeah, so no quotes on Twitter there. But I'm just gonna, unless somebody missed something amazing. Delta's Ocon got new engine parts and Gasly was disqualified from quality. Most noteworthy things about them. Good point, worth a mention. Yeah, it was fuel, wasn't it? Fuel flow for Gasly that got him disqualified, and Ocon. I mean, when we did see Ocon, he was just slowing down because his car was failing. I feel like was just always so in practice was just Ocon drive or qualifying, hitting the wall and causing crazy yellow flags everywhere. Just one of those weekends. But yeah, so yeah, that's a good point on Gasly getting disqualified for the fuel flow rate. So that's that one. RB, I've already kind of touched on it. Tsunoda DNF started 11th. Ricciardo finished 13th, having starting 14th. Hole in the side pod after lap 1 contact with Stroll. But managed to get to lap 15, to be fair to Yuki. Not a lot of pace in there, to be fair, though. And he ended up retiring, like I say, on lap 15. We'll see what he says actually on the incident, because it'll be interesting to see if he's changed his view. Very frustrated to have this happen 2 races in a row. Of course, didn't finish in Monza. A very short race, losing the opportunity to score points, which would still have been very tricky. But you never know on these street races. Starting P12 is obviously not ideal and means that there are lots of risks getting damaged. We just need to step up a little bit in qualifying in the top 10 so we can get a better start. I do like Tsunoda. In terms of what happened on track, it felt like an unnecessary move from him, Stroll, sending it in like that with a nothing to lose approach. I'm not sure what he had to gain, but I wasn't going to make it easy for him. It was a shame, not the way I wanted to end my race, but we'll come back strong in Singapore. Wow, I mean, it's just so unusual that you've got two drivers there blaming each other for an incident. Wow. So odd for Formula One. Daniel Ricciardo says it was a tough race. The start felt okay. Medium runners in front of me looked like they were struggling, and we were able to catch them. I was on the hard tyre and tried to use it where I could by going long and finding the pace. After a few laps, we picked up a lot of graining, which got worse and worse over 10 laps, causing us to be a few seconds off the pace. Team could see some other cars were clearing the graining. However, it definitely took us a lot longer. When we did, we were able to come back a bit. The pace came back as well. Lost a lot of ground. Never experienced graining like that, says Ricciardo, interesting enough. The swing of lap time was up to 4 seconds. Wow, actually, that's quite impressive. We need to understand why we had more graining for longer. Yeah, so that's interesting then. So worst graining he's had then, a swing of 4 seconds in lap time. So really, Tsunoda was too busy getting involved with Lance Stroll, and Ricciardo was too busy trying to find solve his graining and work out where he was losing 4 seconds. So pretty miserable race for RB by the sounds of it. And Sauber, yeah, Zhou beat Bottas today to P14, so congrats there. I suppose, from P17. And Valtteri Bottas finished P16, having started P16 despite 2 cars retiring. Poor Valtteri. Pitted end of lap 11 for hards. Okay, stop at 2.3 seconds and rejoined in last place, where I guess he basically stayed. Where was he? 4 seconds off Ocon, who was 25 seconds off Joe. So what was going on with Bottas then? He only pitted once. Yeah, because that's a long way off. That's 29 seconds off Joe.
That is a good point. But they were basically invisible once again, despite having the most lurid cars on the grid.
It's just their thing, isn't it, really, I think, at this point. I have got a press release, actually. Let's see if they've... Sorry, Bottas has just piqued my interest there.
No, you're absolutely right.
There must have been something then. So let's have a look. So Bottas says, tough day. Yep. Tried to split the car strategies to try and maximise returns, but it didn't really work out in the end. The main issue was the rapid degradation. There we go. The medium tyres at start forced us into an early stop. The car felt better on a hard compound, but even that tyre started to struggle towards the end. Despite some luck, with a few rivals dropping out of contention, we couldn't achieve a balanced stint and missed out on the points. We now need to regroup and try again in Singapore. Even with the degradation on the hards, that's 29 set. Yeah, no, Zhou did run long on the hards and had the mediums on at the end. Much fresher mediums. Bottas's hards have done 40 laps come the end, and Zhou 17. So that's probably where a lot of that time's come from. Zhou said, I think the race went smoothly and cleanly on my end. The team executed our strategy well, but our pace wasn't strong enough to fight close to the points. I feel like that could probably be a copy and paste for every press release for Sauber this season. That said, it's encouraging to see progress this weekend, especially in terms of racecraft. We were able to compete with a few other teams, which is a positive sign. There is still a long road ahead, and while we know we're not quite where we want to be, we'll keep fighting and working together as a team to close the gap. So yeah, I'll let you get into your extensive notes on Sauber then, Stuart.
I mean, as usual, I have absolutely nothing on Sauber because they just might not have been in this race today, and we're being gaslit for all I know. I did, while you were talking about RB, I did notice when you were talking about when you were giving Ricardo's quotes, I did realise something that I hadn't realised during the race was that he and the Alpines went on this insane strategy where they attempted to do the entire race on one set of tyres, essentially, only swapping onto softs right at the very end, which might explain why Ricardo had 4 seconds worth of graining on his tyres. Yeah, so bad race all round for them. And Sauber, I mean, I say this a lot. We're just waiting for the Alvi investment to come in, aren't we? At this point, they are. Yeah, they're kind of nowhere. I felt like it's been a while since we've had a team that sort of felt nowhere-ish. We're back to sort of Williams 2020, 2019 kind of time when you just don't expect them to be anywhere near the points. It must be hard for both drivers at the moment to just keep their chin up and carry on, to be honest. Yeah,
I'm just looking at the strategies now you've said it. Yeah, it's funny though, because Ocon, hang on a minute, sorry. Ocon, I need to check something. Just had a moment here, an epiphany of sorts. Let's have a look. So Ocon went 52 laps on the hard tyre. No, won't have done 50 laps. They were 50. They were a couple laps old before then. And he, not quite. No, that's sprint. Hang on a second. Sorry, no. Yeah. Okay. So here we go. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Today, Ocon did 50 laps on the hard tyre and 1 lap on the softs, as you've pointed out for others, which is a balmy strategy. He finished P15. Last year in Baku, Esteban Ocon did 50 laps on the hards and 1 lap on the softs and finished P15. Maybe, Esteban, that's not working. I think 2 years on the Vals, you've done the same thing, and you're still 15th. There we go. Sorry, I remembered it for the preview, and I was like, that's really random. There you go. Thank you very much to Pascal, by the way, for your super chat. It says, great race today, a bit better from Sauber today. Joe drove well by beating Bottas. Overall, a bit more pace. I wouldn't mind signing Colapinto for next season. He seems to be decent and fast. There you go. Thank you very much, Pascal, for your super chat and your Sauber insight there as our resident Sauber fan. And Purple Zebra says consistency from Ocon. There you go. Well, that's true. If nothing else, it's consistent. So at least we know next year that Ocon's going to try that strategy and finish 15th. So there we go. It was Ocon who nearly ran over the press last year, wasn't it, as well in the pit lane? So at least he didn't do that this year. So not quite as consistent. Disgraceful. Driver of the day then. Officially, Oscar Piastri. I think I can see where this might go. Let me know in chat, one surname, who is your driver of the day? Also, please do leave a like if you could. We've got nearly 500 here, 107 likes. Let's get a few more on the like counter. That'd be fantastic. And don't forget to subscribe as well if you are new. We've got the winners and losers tomorrow, assuming Sean can actually make a video in a day, something he's not done for a long time. Why am I talking about myself in third person? But I am. There we go. So yeah, winners and losers tomorrow, preview on Thursday. There'll be a video out on Saturday. And of course, we're live next Sunday, or I'll be live next Sunday with the Singapore Grand Prix race reaction. So like, subs and all that business, always appreciated. Really helps the channel, and it's never-ending fight with the YouTube algorithm, especially in September, which just seems to be a really pants month for some reason. I guess people have gone back to school and work and
rubbish like that.
Yeah, stupid things. Stay in school, kids.
I know you just sent them all off to start doing Drive of the Day, but the Stewart's decision on Sainz Perez has just come out.
I'll read that while they're doing
FYI.
that. A good shout, Stuart.
Shall I tell you who I'm thinking for Drive of the Day while you're reading?
Yeah, can do. Yeah.
Just keep things flowing. I mean, obviously Piastri's the strong contender, and I think a lot of people will go for him. And I think he seems. I wouldn't argue with that at all, and I probably would do it myself. But just for a little bit of flavour, I might give it to Colapinto. I think he had a great, solid race. I think he's doing exactly what Williams need of him. He battled and defended hard and ended up with a nice 4 points, I think, for his time. So I'm going to give it to Colapinto. I think he had a good race. I don't know where he finished in the overall rankings, but I think he deserves a shout out.
No, I think that's a very fair point. Also, sort of to add to your point on Colapinto, he would have been in the points even without. Well, that's a debate, isn't it? I suppose. Officially, he gained 2 places because 2 cars retired, which would put him 8th. But then Hulkenberg wouldn't have been messing around with yellow flags and green flags, would he? So maybe he wouldn't have. That's maybe a debate. But on paper, that's exactly what would have happened. So there you go. So yeah, no, I think that's a fair shout. I'm going to be boring and go with Piastri, but obviously I just think he was exceptional today. But also nods to Norris for coming through the field, Alonso as well for just being Alonso. Alex Albon was great. Ollie Behrman got a point and raced well. So yeah, but it's got to be Piastri for me. I can't. I can't not. Yes, a little bit of bias there. I'll be honest, but there you go. So I'll come to driver of the day in a minute. So let's just read through this steward's decision very, very quickly. Well, not quickly. It's long. It's always long. The bit you really need to know, the decision is no further action. So that kind of backs up the points we were making, Stuart, about it being a racing incident, but makes my point about the stewards liking to give out penalties for these things redundant because they've actually decided for once not to. So there we go. They conclude Sainz passed Perez after turn 1 and was completely ahead at the apex of turn 2. With a compromised exit by Sainz, Perez pulled to the inside of Sainz. Sainz reported that he was aware of Perez to his inside, Perez being slightly behind. I love they just keep using their name. Was in a better position to see the relative location of the cars. That's what you said, Stuart. But as the 2 cars approached the wall on the right at the exit of turn 2, they were about a metre apart. From this point and throughout the incident, neither driver steered erratically. We both said that. And indeed, both kept their steering very neutral. The stewards checked the driving line of the drivers on previous laps. Sainz was on or close to his normal racing line, which forms a slight angle away from the right-hand wall. From the pit exit to the point of contact, he moved approximately 1 car width further away from the wall. Perez moved approximately half a car width further away from the same wall, being more parallel to the right-hand wall. Good God, get your rulers out. It was thus apparent that while ahead and having the right to drive his line, Sainz did move slightly towards a car that he had limited vision of. At the same time, there was nothing unusual about Perez's line, but he could have done more to avoid the car that he had a better view of. In conclusion, the stewards deemed this to be a racing incident, with neither driver being predominantly at fault, and therefore take no further action. And if they want to appeal that, Ferrari and Red Bull, because they can do. But yeah, no, that's. I know I said about that the stewards are probably a portion of blame on Sainz because he's the one that moves, but that kind of lines up with some of the points we made there, Stuart, didn't it? It's a particularly erratic thing and things like that. But the bit that really interests me, where is it? from the exit to the point of contact, it made approximately 1 car width further away from the wall. That's Sainz. Then Perez moved approximately half a car width further away from the same wall. So, so unless I'm reading that wrong, Sainz has moved a car's width to the left. Perez has moved half a car's width to the left, but he needed to move a bit more, and therefore they've like I said, they've kind of converged at a point, haven't they? And that's it, effectively. I think that's a lot of words, though, isn't it?
As I was reading it, I was thinking, this is exactly what we said. Pretty much all the points are the same. Sort of racing incident. Sure, they weren't moving parallel to the white line, but actually the racing line was to move in a little bit. They sort of drifted together. Perez had full sight of Sainz, but I think you're right. The key bit there is they weren't really moving towards each other. Like they weren't sort of they were both moving left. Just one person was moving left more. So it was just just an accidental convergence. Nothing crazy. So I think I'm glad nothing given out for that.
Do you know what I love though? It's the same incident. It's the same wording, but they have to put out 2 documents. So we've got a document for Carlos Sainz collision with car 11, and we've got a document for Sergio Perez collision with car 55. And apart from moving, no, they are absolutely identical. I know they have to because they put 2 summons out, but goodness me.
Oh, and they both have the spelling mistake on as well.
Yes, they do.
I know. Both pervious laps.
Oh, them pervious laps. Anyway, let's. So there we go. I think it was Purple Zebra said reasonable decision. Yeah, I'm not going to argue with that. What I'm surprised at is because even though they've explained it there, because Carlos Sainz is the one that moves, I'm surprised they've not taken action because they do like to sometimes, don't they? That was kind of my point earlier, but now it's. I just let them race, and unless somebody does something deliberate and obviously deliberate, then leave them alone.
I think from what I've generally seen sort of on Twitter and in the chat and things, I think people are pretty chill and kind of like, just let this one go. It was just a bit of an accident. They both maybe could have done more to avoid the accident and so on, but it's fine. If this had been 2021 and it had Hamilton
or Verstappen and Norris, I was going to say
this would have been raging for the next week.
I was going to say Verstappen or Norris. If that had been Verstappen or Norris, or even Verstappen and Leclerc or something like that, it would have been. Let's not get into that. No, you're right though. It's quite funny, isn't it? But we'll close the poll as well in a second. But I'll just do your drivers of the day. So I've gone with Piastri. Stuart's gone with Colapinto, and the official is Piastri. So scroll up a little bit. Where are we? So who came in first? It was CPB. Went with Oscar. Vesca's gone with Oscar. Raul's gone with Piastri. AAA 7777 says Sergio Perez. Kaori says Oscar. Rossi says Piastri. Purple Zebra says Oscar. Has to be Piastri. Bro drove perfect, says Sighted Canvas. Analysis. Lee's gone with Stoff. Thank you very much. Pascal says Colapinto as well. Dex says Charles. Charles. Red Raven says Colapinto and Behrman. Ian's gone with Piastri. Has to be Piastri or Ocon, says Kevin. Yeah, got to be Ocon. It's consistent, massively consistent. Sighted Canvas has put some honorable mentions in. Behrman for defending against 7-time world champion. Impressive. Ash says Norris, good recovery drive. Piastri. Ian says can't think of anyone else. I might come to that, Dale, if we've got time. I'm going to have to look a bit more into that, but I know what you're talking about. I've seen it on Twitter. Just to let you know, I've seen that one. Oscar, all from CPB, talking about something else there, I think, but there you go. We're not going to get into that. We'll avoid that. Because I love you lot, but sometimes, goodness me. Gianni says, driver of the day, Norris. And anybody else? Piastri for Annette. And we'll probably leave it there if there's nobody. Yeah, so Piastri seems to be the popular choice, but some mentions in there for Charles and Behrman. There's a Colapinto as well in there. So, I'm just... Who said can't think of anyone else? Was it a Yinko? I'm just trying to think. I think there were a few in there that I'd give a nod to. Certainly. I think we've got a decision on the McLaren thing. But
Yep.
It's not on the official page as far as I can see. Unless I'm missing it, Stuart. Is it not? Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
It's just literally come up now.
Third one down.
Yeah. So team personnel and equipment in pit lane during the race. Breach of Article 34.13. Competitor is fined €5,000. So it's not unusual for team personnel to move towards the parc fermé area before the end of the race. Given what happened here last year, though, that's a bit, yeah. McLaren had team members and equipment in the pit lane while other teams were still pitting and thus created a potentially unsafe condition, and therefore they get the €5,000 fine. So actually, although it was team personnel and not media, that's similar to what happened last year, isn't it? Where people were too early in the pit lane whilst we had Ocon, Ricciardo and Gasly all pitting on the final lap. So, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like the team are getting ready to celebrate Oscar's win, but yeah, obviously there were some late stops just like last year. So yeah, never learn.
Naughty. It's very naughty. By the way, just on Verstappen as well, just very, very quickly, from earlier in the race, from earlier in the stream, really, he did actually pit just as the virtual safety car he was in the pits as the virtual safety car came out for the Sainz Perez crash to put softs on. I assumed to go for fastest lap, but obviously couldn't get fastest lap because the safety car or the VSC came out. So he was going to try and go for that point to take it away from Norris, but obviously didn't work out. I've closed the poll. Rate the 2024 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. 64% say great, 28% say good, 5% say average/okay, and 1% are never happy. They've said bad, so there we go. Each to their own, I guess. But I guess we're only waiting then, aren't we, for Verstappen, Hülkenberg, Ocon and Gasly's decision on this virtual safety car overtaking thing, but I don't think we're going to get much on that. So I'll open it up to Q&A then. I think that's the right thing to do. And I'll keep an eye on the decisions thing. We've got 4 eyes between us. We should be okay. So, so any questions you've got on the race or anything to do with F1, pop them in chat. We'll do a few, but we've run a bit long today because of me waffling as usual and everything else going on around it. So, yes, please do get some questions in. Drop a like and all of that as well. And subscribe. Yeah. I'm not getting into that conversation. We're not doing it. I'm just trying to think of what I had someone to say, Stuart, about Formula One this weekend. That was it. It's a question for you, and then chat will pop their questions in now, and I'll read some of those. But the whole weekend, despite the great result for Piastri and the great stuff from Colapinto and everything else that's gone on, has it felt a little bit off to you, like a little bit flat? I don't know if it's because we've had the newy news and we now know that Sargent's no longer there, so that rumour's all gone away, and Perez turned up this weekend, so nobody's speculating about that. Just in general, it's just felt a little bit of a flat weekend, but it's actually been really enjoyable as well. I can't put my finger on it. Maybe it's just, I'm just grumpy.
Maybe it was I think sometimes you get that, and what I'm about to refer to doesn't really happen until, I guess, qualifying. But sometimes things feel a little bit off when the main title protagonists are sort of relegated down the field a little bit, and the focus shifts to the sort of, I'm going to say, B characters, and that's, I don't want to put shade on Piastri, Leclerc, Perez, and all that. But you know when you sort of, as you're sort of heading towards the end of the championship, and everyone's been talking about, can Norris overhaul Verstappen, and then suddenly we're like, oh, actually, neither of them did well in qualifying, so we're going to look at these other people for a while. Sometimes that makes it feel a bit off, but yeah, maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure if I felt it in the same way that you have.
It's not. I don't think it's so much that it wasn't. It wasn't a bad weekend sort of thing, but I just a Red Raven saying chat suspiciously quiet. It's just, I don't know. I think there's been quite a lot of talk, hasn't there? Of we had the Sargent stuff, the Newey stuff, we had the Magnussen ban, talk of Kimi Antonelli. And it's all just gone very quiet, and it just sort of, I don't know if it's, but I also know that sort of mid to end of September is a bit anyway for a lot of people. So maybe, I don't know, maybe that's what it is. But yeah, I enjoyed the funny thing is I enjoyed the weekend overall. So there you go. Had a nice tea party yesterday for a 40th, which was
very nice.
Yeah.
I wonder if also the fact that if you're a Sky watcher, David Croft and Martin Brundle both weren't here, so the whole thing just had a slightly different tone. Maybe it just felt different.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe, yeah. No, that's a good point, because obviously, I mean, I like Harry Benjamin. I think he does a great job. It's we've talked about it before. It's not an easy job doing it the way we do it for testing. So I can't imagine with people talking in your ear and millions of people watching. It's a hell of a lot of pressure, isn't it? So I think he does a great job, and I quite like Karun Chandok's insight. But yeah, maybe I don't know. It's weird. Just a random thing I thought of whilst I was waiting for questions to come in, but we've got a couple. CPB says, breaking news, Max Verstappen isn't going to Mercedes next year. There you go. That's spiced it up now. Thank you very much. Dell says, and somebody might answer this, I can't do it on stream, but Dell says, I wonder what the largest gap between teammates who both score points to avoid outliers in the World Championship is. Max Perez is currently 1-8. Even Albon Colapinto is 13-19. So there you go. If anyone wants to go and do some maths and have a look at that, then feel free. Do you think Perez and Ferrari will be able to keep up their respective momentum beyond Singapore? They both go good there, but not sure about afterwards, says Rossi. Post Singapore, Ferrari maybe, because they seem to have found something. Whether it is specific to the tracks we've had, I don't know, but they seem to have found something. But Perez, for me, the jury's out. You can't, as much as we get excited about seeing a driver turn things around, basing it on 1 or 2 races when you look at how the rest of the season's gone, apart from those first 2 or 3, you know, the form book says that he'll return to where he was. But my hope is that even though the crash happened, he was still performing really well up to that point. It's his strongest weekend for a long time up to that point. He can take confidence from that, go to Singapore, a track he also does well at, go well, and then continue to grow as the season goes on. Sort of grow back into being the Perez of some of last year, 22, 21, and what we know from his Force India in that day. So that's my hope. But my gut right now says that he'll probably end up. You'll all be saying on the qualifying watch along for Kota that he'll be 8th, basically. Back to being the back of that pack of 8 drivers. That's my view, Stuart. I want to be positive, but the form book says otherwise, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think we need more evidence of a consistent set of results from him. And to be honest, from Ferrari. I know we're all talking about Ferrari now being the sort of main challengers to McLaren, but really they've only had like 2 solid back-to-back results, and I think we just need to see a little bit more just to be sure that they really are where they want to be, and it's not just these 2 sort of high-speed, slow corner tracks have flattered them. Maybe I'd love to see it. I mean, I'd love to see Perez up there a little bit more. I'd love to see Ferrari constantly fighting for top points, but I guess we'll have to see. I'm not, I wouldn't put any bets on it yet. I think we need to see more, because it's, well, with both really, with Ferrari and Perez, we've definitely seen inconsistency from them, and we've seen them turn up some weekends and not turn up other weekends, and I don't think we can necessarily count on them to be there every single race, but I'd love them to be. I would love them to be.
Yeah, it is also worth saying that the last 3 years, Perez has finished 4th twice and 3rd once in Kota, and he's been on the podium in Mexico in 21 and 22. So he goes well there as well. Even prior to Red Bull, he was 10th place in the USA in that'd be 2019, I think that was Racing Point. Yeah, so he goes well at that track. 8th the year before, 8th the year before that. So that's another track he actually has got good results at in the past. But hopefully, I guess is is my answer to that one. I want to see him do well, but I do find it interesting, though, that since Max has started to struggle with that car, the talk of Perez being replaced has gone a lot quieter, which, to my untrained noggin, whatever, says to me that maybe Red Bull are going, oh, actually, maybe the car's got something to do with this. It doesn't excuse it, because Max Verstappen was pulling out some cracking results, but and winning races in that car when Perez was struggling. But it is interesting to me that it's gone quiet. Whether that's just because he kept the seat after the summer break, whether that changed after Singapore, if he has a shocker, we'll see. But it does seem to have gone a little bit quiet. But then I said it at the time, when you look at the wording of that statement from Red Bull, that question mark doesn't go away. You know, they very much are. He stays after the summer break. For those 4, we know he's got 4 races coming up that he's been good at in the past. They've not committed to the end. They've not said end of the season at any point. So it's still there, but it's definitely gone quieter, which is interesting. Sighted Canvas says, yes, I did notice that too. That means the car really is bad. Chris Medland reporting, Black Hawk Soda saying, reporting that all the drivers have got a warning. In fact, they're starting to come in now, actually, on the safety car infringements. In fact, they're all in. So we'll do Verstappen's. Let's have a look. So just a warning. Driver overtook other cars after the checkered flag, but while a virtual safety car was still being displayed following the crash at turn 2, the driver was reminded that while passing after the checkered flag is not unusual, it is prohibited in the case of yellow safety car or virtual safety car procedures. While the drivers were aware of where the incident was, they could not have known if emergency equipment or marshals were being dispatched onto track, and so have to proceed with caution. So it goes on to say the stewards are aware that this has happened earlier in the season and was not noticed at the time. We therefore warn the driver concerned, along with all other competitors, further breaches may incur significant penalties. So long story short, they shouldn't have done it. They've got away with it before. They've now been warned. If they do it again, it probably will be a penalty in future. So that seems... What's up with the FIA? That's reasonable. 2 reasonable decisions. They're drunk.
And I imagine, Thursday on Singapore, or whenever it is they hold the drivers' briefing with the FIA, they'll remind them again that this is the rule they have to follow. I get the point. I get why that's important, and I can understand why the drivers assumed that once the checkered flag hit, like virtual safety car rules didn't apply. I'm sure they were all, behaving safely, but yeah, I understand why that rule's in place. And I think, yeah, again, reasonable. Don't need to bring the hammer down. You just need to remind them of what the rules are.
Sighted Canvas wants to know if there are any sprint races left this year. Yes, there are. I believe it is COTA, so Austin. I assume Brazil is going to be on there, and I believe Qatar are our remaining 3. So I'm just going to double check now. Yep, there you go. USA, but Austin, because we've got 3 USA races now. Sao Paulo, which is Brazil, and Qatar. So 19th, 2nd, and 19th of October, 2nd of November, and 30th of November. So I'm kind of hoping in future they space them out a bit better, because we sort of had 3 relatively early in the year, then 3 towards the end. It would be nice if we could maybe spread them out a bit nicer rather than just, I do find it weird on the sprints that they've removed Austria from that one for next year. Was weird, because of all the tracks, I think Austria and Brazil are the ones where they just work. So I was quite surprised at that, but you know,
who knows? Who knows why they do what they do? Money, probably.
Yeah, definitely. Any more questions? We'll try to look for something specific to the weekend. Ayinka says, "Is it Sean's 27th birthday?" Oh, I wish it was. No. It's not my birthday. My birthday is March. Why did I have to think about that?
I was wondering.
24th of March is my birthday. I went to a 40th birthday party yesterday. Sorry. It was nice. So yeah, sorry if I got that confused. My birthday's March, so don't worry. I will be in March, so looking forward to that. Mm-hmm. Only reason I wait for the sprints is I want to use my F1 fantasy chip, says Vesk. On a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you to watch Will's comedy review of the Perez Sainz crash, and which team do you favour for Singapore? It depends if it's still up when I go watch it, I suppose. On Will. By the way, I have permission from Will to poke fun at that, so there you go. Will can give it, Andy can take it, so that's fair enough. We're allowed to do that. Favour I think McLaren probably for Singapore, but people said in chat, Ferrari have been strong there, haven't they? They were good last year. In fact, I think they've had the last 2 poles or something like that in Singapore. So it is a track that they like, but I sort of look at it and I just can't help but think McLaren. I don't fancy Red Bull at all next weekend, but that is based on what happened last year. In fact, they've had 3 poles, Ferrari at Singapore, and since 2015, 1, 2, 3, 4, so 5 of the last 7 pole positions in Singapore have Ferrari. Wow. So maybe Ferrari is the answer to that then, but I think McLaren v Ferrari, let's say.
That feels right. I know I think we do tend to lean into the what's happening now is what will happen next kind of thing, which honestly to a much extent is kind of all you can really go on. But we know Singapore can sometimes throw up a bit of a surprise for whatever reason, the weird temperatures, the kind of unique layout. Yeah, but I'm expecting McLaren Ferrari, and we tend to see a lot more mistakes at Singapore than other races because it gets so tiring and it goes on for 2 hours. So I think, yeah, towards the end of the race, the final result may change as it did last year.
Yes, that was a good race last year, wasn't it? Blackhawk says, you have a list of how drivers and teams are getting on with power unit parts, trying to think of if there's any more penalties before the end of the season. I have, but I've not updated it yet. So we've got, obviously, Hamilton will have some of these. This will be wrong for Hamilton and, I want to say, Ocon, I think. So Verstappen and Perez have both used 5 of the internal combustion engine. So it's 4 of the turbocharger, MGUH and K. Energy store, Perez has 3 of. Verstappen 2 of on that. On the control electronics is the same. 7 on exhaust. So, pretty much everybody, just having a quick check, is on the cusp of a penalty, except for, well, no, even he is with his ICE and all of that. So, yeah, everybody is pretty much, everyone's had 4 ICEs at least. Same with turbochargers, MGUH and K. Exhaust is a bit different. Red Bull has 7 exhausts this year. Everyone else is sort of 3, 5, 3, 3, 3, 3, 6. Yeah, so that's quite interesting. But yeah, most of them are on the cusp with those sort of 4 main components, I'd say. And then the energy store and control electronics is a little bit more varied. For example, Alonso's used 1 of each of those. Others have used 4. Like Pierre Gasly's used 4. So everybody's sort of, I think next. When do we think, Stuart? Next change of power units, Mexico, because power's less of a thing, or no, that makes sense, does it? I think where we might get like a Monza 2017 where just everyone takes a penalty kind of race.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I feel like last few seasons, and maybe I'm remembering this wrong, we've seen a lot less of this sort of back end of the season, everyone sort of taking a penalty kind of thing. I think, strangely, in having that slight increase in the number of races in the calendar, what also came with that was an extra engine component allocation, if I remember rightly, which kind of made the sort of average number of races per component go down, if that makes sense. So the engines are sort of less stressed over a season than they were in maybe 2020, 2021, when we saw a lot of everything changing at the back end. And I think maybe we would have seen a Lando Norris kind of engine change to here if it was that important, because here we would have been like a pretty free way to do it, to get your extra engine in, maybe. I don't know. So I mean, Brazil is a good place to do it because you can overtake really easily, and maybe that'll set you up for the rest of the season from there, because there's actually quite a few races from Brazil onwards nowadays, so that might be a good place to do it. But yeah, I think if anyone's going to do it, it's probably going to be there.
Yeah, like I say, everybody's on 4 except Tsunoda, Gasly, and the 2 Red Bulls, but that's because they're on 5. So, and that's on the ICE, and it's similar on turbocharger and that. So yeah, interesting. But it'll be interesting where they go for it. But I'll tell you what, Stuart. It's not relevant to the weekend, but I'll end on this question for you. I talked about it briefly yesterday. What do you make of this this 10-car rookie race they're talking about for the end of the season in Abu Dhabi? Do you think it's a good thing, or do you think, because I kind of feel like the testing was probably enough, but it does, I don't want to be negative about everything all the time, but it does feel a little bit, or pessimistic really, a little bit like we can now charge Abu Dhabi a little bit more money because they've got an extra race in the weekend somehow. I don't know. It just feels a bit. I don't know why they've gone for it, but they're discussing it, and it sounds like it might be a thing. There you go. We'll leave it there. Yeah.
It's got the kind of, okay. So I think initially it kind of has this sort of gimmicky cash grab flavor to it in a way, but on the other hand, I think we have spoken a fair bit about how do we give rookies more of a shot. They get very limited time in the car. There are times when we, like this weekend, when we see rookies parachuted into the car or kind of drafted in for the last few races, and we actually get to see how they race and give them experience, and it puts eyes on them that they didn't have eyes on before, so maybe they can grab some seats and actually get some of this kind of junior pipeline flowing. But a 10-car race sort of at the end of the season, I don't know. I mean, I'm willing to, as with sprint races, I'm willing to try these things out, but I feel like maybe I'm skeptical that if it's all a bit rubbish, Liberty will pretend it was a roaring success and add 10 of them to the season or something. But we'll see. It does strike me as more of a money thing than a useful thing on the face of it.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to think of an example of something that Liberty Media and FOM have introduced that they said was a trial, wasn't permanent, and they take feedback on, and then when the feedback was negative, they said was a roaring success and kept them. I can't think of anything that's happened recently like that. No, it'll come to me later. I can't think. But just so apparently it's 10 rookie drivers. They'll take part in the post Abu Dhabi test on the Tuesday, and then they'll be given a qualifying session halfway through the day, and then put on a sprint race in the evening. Is the idea there? I like giving rookie drivers more time in a Formula One car. All for that, but I think there are probably more interesting ways of doing that. But I'm not going to say them, because if someone from FOM is listening, because they're everywhere, they might take it and then run with it. And my ideas are generally terrible, so that's a bad idea. Yeah, no, we'll see. Like you say, try it, see what happens, and if we all hate it, then they'll do them anyway. There you go. Yeah, we'll leave it there then, Stuart. That was my final question. Just going to quick scroll through chat and see nothing there. A lot of conversations going on that I kind of want to be part of, but I also don't want to read on stream. But yes, that's it then, Stuart, for this one. Thank you so much as always. And you're not with me next week, are you, at Singapore? Yeah, I'm trying to get my head straight, but yeah, a pleasure as always. And I'm sure you'll be on at least one before the end of the year, I'm sure. We'll discuss that at a later date though. And hopefully you have a good weekend next weekend and Singapore gives you something to get excited about. If not, then I'll apologise on behalf of F1 and everyone
thank you.
involved.
I appreciate your apology. Yes, pleasure to chat with you. Have fun next week, and I'm sure I'll see you in October for the final stretch.
Yes.
Very excited about the end of the season. Wasn't expecting that at the beginning of the season, but here we are on tenterhooks.
Well, like somebody else said earlier, if you look at the race winners graphic on the stream at the minute, how colourful the second half of the year has been compared to the first half. There's no Red Bull there at all, is it? Crazy. But yeah, thank you very much, Stuart. And I'll probably talk to you fairly soon, I think.
Lovely. Ta-ra for now.
Cheers, Stuart. Bye. Thank you to Stuart. Thank you to all of you guys as well for tuning in, as always. A pleasure. That is it for this one then. I will be back again, hopefully tomorrow, probably later in the evening, with the winners and losers video for Baku. I'll come up with those after this one. And then, of course, the preview is out on Thursday, and then there'll be a video Saturday, and, of course, I'll be live next Sunday for the race reaction. And, of course, the Monday afterwards, there'll be winners and losers for that as well. So lots of content to come over the next week. So please do drop a like before you go. That'd be massively appreciated. And subscribe if you are new so you don't miss out on any future videos or streams. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye.